rules that guys don't even get related to witnesses. And most of them are in the California Criminal Code. These are the things that we instruct juries with. Okay? And I'm not going to be able to, it's pretty boring. But the point is, we have ways of instructing witnesses so they'll understand what is, juries need to know. Is this witness on the stand reliable? How does the juror know? We have instructions for them. They look like this. We tell the juror, you can ask these kinds of questions. Yada, yada, yada. I don't want to read that to you. Here's what it comes down to. First issue we're trying to isolate. Were the witnesses even there to begin with? That's important because, for example, this is my dad's case from 1974. Never got solved. 12-year-old girl kidnapped on Thanksgiving Day, sadly killed and dumped off the rocks of outside. This knucklehead confessed to it. Ronald Kozak. Ronald Kozak didn't murder her. He wasn't even there. But he got a lot of attention for a short period of time by confessing to it. He had some other issues. So that case is still open. But the first question we got to ask, was that witness ever even there to begin with? The second set of questions we ask a jury to ask about witnesses deals with this. Are the witnesses supported externally? Is what they say, is there evidence outside of them like fingerprints or DNA? If it happens to agree with their testimony, they're probably reliable. The third set of questions we ask witnesses has to do with this. Have they been honest or accurate in the past? Do you remember the Michael Jackson trial? Where he was being tried for a pedophilia case. He had been supposedly molesting a young boy. His mom, when she testified, she was crucified on the stand because she had lied in the past about a suit with J.C. Penney. And so they were instructed, hey, if you find that she hasn't been honest and accurate in the past, you can disregard her testimony on this case. And guess what they did? And he walked. Okay? So this is one of the questions we ask. Have they been honest and accurate in the past? And the last set of questions is all about this issue. Do the witnesses have an ulterior motive? If you got a wife and a husband, and they're in a case against each other, oh, it's a nightmare. Because I can't trust anything he says about her or she says about him. They got some other motives involved here. They got kids they're fighting over, money they're fighting over. You can't trust witnesses like this. Does that make sense? So you have four criteria that we use to test witnesses. And you now know what it is, okay? These are the four criteria. I'll make it simple for you. All these things all boil down to this. It comes down to, were they there? Can they be verified? Are they honest? And are they biased? Now, we can test the Gospels the same way. These are the same criteria we use to test witnesses in court every day. So now we're going to test the witnesses, and the witnesses in this case are the apostles. Does that make sense? Everything David told you tonight, sadly, unfortunately, doesn't actually meet the standard you'd like it to meet. Here are the apostles. Nice little illustration of them from Byzantine era. Let's go on and talk about what they actually do. Let's pretend we're looking at a timeline for a second. This is Jesus' life in 30 AD. And this is the Council of Laodicea in 363 AD. The council that for the first time established the canon of the New Testament. It's here that these folks actually decide, okay, tell you what, time out. These 27 books are the New Testament. Anything else is not the New Testament. That occurs for the first time in 363. That's pretty late in history. Atheists would like you to believe that there wasn't even really a New Testament around until around here. They invented this stuff in the 4th century. And you can tell that's kind of where David's coming from, right? He wants us to believe that because let's face it, we can compare this, just for a second, to a criminal scene. Here's the crime scene. Here's the courtroom. Sometimes we find evidence at the crime scene that we got to bring into the courtroom, like a shell casing. Eventually that shell casing has to be presented in court. The question, of course, is, where does the shell casing really come into the case? Was it really here at the crime scene? Or did this lying piece of dirt detective take it out of his pocket and stick it in the property room and became part of the case late? And nobody really knew it, so the poor criminalist who was unsuspecting brought it to the lab, and she's thinking it comes from the crime scene, but she doesn't really know. This is the liar right here. And so she starts doing work on it, and she gives it to the next detective who has no idea that it's also a late entry, and he brings it into court. Now that's a problem. O.J. Simpson, give you an example. We got Nicole's blood in his house, on his socks, in his trap of his drain. The accusation is, no, he didn't bring it there at the time of the crime. The detective brought it over from the crime scene and put it in the crime scene late. That's the accusation. So if this is true, you can't trust that that's the same piece of evidence down here. Same thing happens all the time with these guys with the Gospels. What they would say is, we have this, we claim it's written here. And then it gets all the way to the Council of Laodicea clean. they would say, no, 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 no. You got an author who appears very late in history. He lies about it. It's way after the fact. No one's living here to even catch the lie. And then poor some unsuspecting guy who thinks it's the truth starts to live on it, and it gets all the way to the council where it's finally affirmed. That's their claim. It's very similar to what we have here. So how do we deal with this in a court of law when it's the casing we're talking about? It's pretty simple. It's called the chain of custody. We're looking at how does this thing get all the way in? And there's a, hopefully this will work, we have to follow the chain of custody. We have to say, okay, who's the first officer who at the crime scene documented picking it up? He's got a report. He put it into property. And then he ends up, it's in property until the detective comes in and takes a look at it. He pulls it out of property. He's got to sign it out of property. He brings it over to the crime lab. The crime lab has to book it into property and do the work so we can see when it was collected, his report, when it was pulled out of property, his report, when it was submitted to the crime lab, their report, when it goes back into property, when he takes it back out, and when he brings it to court. Now we got documentation of every step of the way. That's called the chain of custody. Let me tell you something. Detectives get hammered on this in the courtroom. Because the issue is, hey, I want to know. You say that came from the crime scene, but unless you can prove it, dude, it didn't come from the crime scene. So we're always very careful about documenting the chain of custody. The question I have, is there a New Testament chain of custody that gets us from the crime scene to the council? And it turns out there is. I find 5 chains of custody. I'm going to share with you a few briefly. 3 of them. But it knocks down everything David's saying. If the chain of custody can be demonstrated, then we know that the Gospels are early. Does that make sense, guys?
Yeah.